Hi, I'm Andrew Simpson with Ether Automation, and in this video, or in this video series, we're going to be building an ERP system in Zoho Creator for manufacturing specifically. So this series is going to cover from first creating a Zoho Creator app, and then adding modules and components and automation and integrations into other systems to help manage a assembly line. The orders as they come in, orders as they get shipped out, inventory level, work in progress, burn down rate, projected delivery times, et cetera, et cetera. So in this video specifically, we're going to be creating a new Zoho Creator app and creating some of the modules that you'll need in order to start this project out. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. Hopefully it is the correct screen. Otherwise, this will be a short video. Okay, so I'm in Zoho Creator and I've click the create a new application button. I'm gonna move this over here. So I'm gonna click create from scratch. And I'm gonna call this manufacturing ERP. And I'm gonna create an application. So we start out with a basic Zoho Creator app. In this video, we want to start out by building some of the building blocks to help manage this app. So let's start with the first one. We're going to create a new form from scratch. We're going to call this products. All right. Create a form. And on that form, we need the product name. And then we're going to need the SKU for that product. Great. This is all we're going to start with right now. Later on in the series, we're going to add some other fields here. But for the time being, it's all we need. So I'm going to click done. And now we have our products. I'm going to create another module called vendors. So these are the people you buy components from. So we're going to have a single line and call it vendor name. And then we're going to have another line. And this is going to be used later, but this is the Zoho inventory vendor ID. All right. And I'm going to click done. Now, is there a reason we started with these two? No, they're just higher up on my list for this video, right? So from here, now we're going to actually build a module that's going to be used a lot of the time. So let's click start. I'm going to create a new component from scratch, and I'm going to call this the sales orders, right? So when a customer places an order with you, it's a sales order. And this is what we're going to make here. I'm going to have one called sales order name. You don't need this, but I just like having a name at the top, right? We're going to have one called order dates. Sales order number. We're going to have a drop down for the status. And in that drop down, we're going to have one for received and progress, on hold, and then we're going to have one more for shipped. There we go. There's going to be another one for purchase orders, but we'll need to come back to that one in a second because we don't have a purchase orders module, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. And finally, a single line for Zoho inventory sales order ID. And this will be used to help us sync between Zoho inventory and this Creator app. All right. So underneath that, we're going to want a module, or not a module, a subform. And that subform, it says it can be a blank form or we can create one, all right? I'm gonna click blank form. Now, let me just add a field called lookup. And this is gonna be the product name in a drop-down, done. Now, while this is happening, I'm just gonna click done. I'm gonna check here. So this is a problem because the subform doesn't actually have its own module. We are going to want that for this thing, right? So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to create a new form, right? And we're going to call this form from scratch, sales order line items, right? There is a reason why we want it to be this way, and I'll talk about it in a little bit. So let's start out with the lookup. So just for some context, this form will be a subform in the sales order, and it will act as the line item for a line item on the sales order. So most line items are going to have the product, right? They're going to have probably a decimal field. You know what? Let's go number for the quantity. We're going to have another number called available product quantity at time of order, right? And this will come into play a little later. We're going to have received products, which is going to be a number as well. This is how many products we've received. We're going to have another one for built number. We're going to call this built products. We're going to have a status. And the statuses are going to be on back order, queued, for production. Let me spell it right. Queued, in production, ready to ship, and shipped. Finally, we're going to add one more here that is number of items shipped. Okay. So I'm going to go back to the sales order. I'm going to open this form. And I'm actually going to delete this subform here. And we're going to add a new subform. The new subform will be the sales order line items, right? So this means that on the sales order, the subform line items, the ones that we have here, will show up on the sales order. So I'm going to exit out of this one, and I'm going to make a new module because there's a couple things that we want to add to the subform line items. That is this one here. We want to add the purchase order line items, right? We'll talk about why in a bit. We want to add the work order line items and finally shipments, right? And the reason is you need to assemble something for a sales order. The work order may be completed, but the work order may be a part of some other stuff. Same with shipments. You may not have all the inventory items you need. And so we're going to make some new modules here. So I'm actually going to start with the purchase order line items. So on the purchase order line items, we've got some, it's very similar to the sales order line items. We're going to start up with a lookup, and this will be the product name. We want the quantity. We're going to have another lookup to the sales order line item. We're going to have a drop down. We're going to put that up here for status. And this will be issued, partially received, fully received, and that's it. All right. Now, we're going to want to add a couple more items, fields into this module. But for the time being, I'm not going to add them. I'm just going to leave this tab open. Now, on the sales order, I'm going to want to go in here and add another lookup for the purchase order line items, and it's going to be the ID. An existing relationship is found. Do we want to enable bidirectional sync? The answer would be no. The answer would be yes. Right. So now we have that one on the sales order line items. We want to do the same thing with work orders and shipments. But let's go ahead and finish up the purchase orders. So on the purchase order, we want a PO number. We want to have a lookup to the vendor because we need to know who this is going to go to. We want a status field or drop down status. We're going to have this with draft issued received. We're going to modify this in a later video. We're going to have a date. All this date received. No, date issued. We're going to have another date in here. Expected received date. We're going to have a lookup for sales orders. This is a multi-select. We're going to call this related sales orders. And then finally, we are going to want a single line for Zoho inventory PO ID. So now that we have the purchase order created, we want to add the purchase order line items. So go down here, click purchase order line items, click done, and there we go. Now we have a purchase order. So I'm going to click done, and I am going to add a new one. This is for shipments. So we want to start out, we're going to have a shipment name. We're going to have a lookup for the sales orders. And we don't want it to be for multiple sales orders, right? We're going to have a tracking number. We're going to have a ship date. We're going to have a ship fee. And finally, we want two single lines, Zoho inventory shipment ID and Zoho inventory package ID. And then on a shipment, we're going to have a subform. This one doesn't actually need to be its own module. So we're going to click blank form. We're going to call it line items. And we're going to add things like the lookup to the product. We're going to add a lookup. We're going to add a number field for the quantity shipped. And finally, we're going to have one more lookup for the sales order line items. We're going to have that as an ID. Great. So now we have the shipment records ready. I'm going to go back to the sales order line items. And I'm going to have a lookup for the shipments. We're going to have a shipment name. That handles that one. And then now that we're able to have an order, have line items for the order, place orders, have line items for those orders we placed, ship orders out, we need to receive shipments as well. So we're going to call this a shipment received. And we're going to call this a shipment name. We want to have a lookup for the POs, purchase orders, and we're going to use the PO number. It's going to be a multi-select. We're going to have a date field, date received, and then another single line field. And this one is going to be called Zoho inventory purchased received ID. And so last thing we want to do is we actually want to have a purchase received line item. So again, we're going to go in here from scratch, purchased received line item. And let's spell that correctly. And on that, we're going to want some pretty standard features. So let's add the product lookup, product name. We're going to want a number for quantity received. There we go. Quantity damaged. And then a lookup for the PO line items. And then at a later date, we're going to add some assigned bins. So if we go back to the shipment received, I'm then going to add a subform for the, I'm going to have to refresh this. Purchase, yeah. I don't know why I call it purchase received, but it's called line items. And let's click done. So what have we actually done here? You may recognize that this is very similar to the structure inside Zoho inventory. And you would be right. All right. If I go and access this application and look at a shipment receive or a sales order, this is a very similar structure to Zoho inventory. So the question is, why do we want to make it a different app? Well, some of the things I put in here are things like received products or built products or status, right? The goal for this app would be to receive a order, put that order into a queue for assembly, which it may have a purchase order to make sure you have the available inventory. And so the end result of this is when an order is received, as a sales order is received, a purchase order may be created. And then as that purchase order gets received, it's going to update the sales order or update the work order that it can be assembled. And so we actually want the line items of those orders to kind of match up, because you may place an order for inventory that's going to cover 3 sales orders. And we want things to kind of line up and get automated here. So this video is about setting up the basic structure. In the next video, I'm going to talk about setting up your work order systems. We're going to integrate the work order line items into the sales orders and the purchase orders so that we know how things line up, as well as assigning those work orders to people, and then doing some other stuff around the architecture. This is going to be a longer series. By the end of this, you'll be able to have your products in Zoho Creator, and you'll have your team working out of Zoho Creator, and you'll be able to automatically assign work orders, have those work orders built and shipped, and be able to run various analytics inside the platform, including how long it takes to assemble certain items, how long until a certain order actually gets assembled and shipped, given the backlog and the amount of time it takes to assemble those items, etc. You can project partial shipments, or you could ship, partial orders. There's quite a bit that we're going to be building into this platform for this video series. So I hope you found this helpful. I will see you in the next video.